Hey there, this is Natalie, and I'm once again in my gem form for another video about Houseki no Kuni, or Land of the Lustrous as it's known in English. While my prediction at the end of my previous Houseki no Kuni video that the hiatus would end in summer 2021 was obviously completely wrong, I'm sure that we can't have too much longer to wait. So I feel like now might be a good time to talk about some different theories I have about how the series might end, once it eventually returns. Before that though, I just want to give a quick shout out to Bilibili Comics, who I'm happy to say are sponsoring my channel. Bilibili Comics gives you a site and app where you can read all kinds of webtoons for free, including all of the genres you could want, from isekai, fantasy, comedy and slice of life, through to every kind of romance you can think of. Click the link in the description or in my pinned comment to take a look at Bilibili Comics for yourself and maybe find something good to read while we wait for Houseki no Kuni to make its return. And on that note, let's talk about how the series might end. Naturally, this video will contain manga spoilers up to chapter 95. So, where we're currently left is with Phos, the only one left on Earth, having ordered Kongou-sensei to break. Phos has been given the prayer ability, but will take 10,000 years to understand all of Kongou-sensei's experiences. All of the gems are now on the moon, and have been turned into lunarians, plus the gems who had been powderized, like Antarcticite, as well as Kongou-sensei himself, have all been revived as lunarians. We know the intention of Enma in his ongoing manipulations of Phos was with the goal of ultimately driving Phos to become human. This is because the lunarians, who are the spirits of humans, want to return to nothingness, and to do that they need someone to pray for them. Kongou-sensei was created by the now extinct humans to fulfill the role of praying for remaining souls when the last humans had died, but he can't do this. Whether this is because he's actually defective or because it causes a conflict with his morality, we don't really know, though for someone who is effectively a machine, those would really amount to the same thing. However, he is designed to follow the orders of humans, so by turning Phos into something he recognises as human, Enma believed Kongou would have to follow the order to pray. This didn't quite work out, but in a very emotional scene, Phos ordered Kongou instead to break, and he did, showing that Phos had indeed become human. Now, the issue with praying in the first place was that Kongou doing this would not only pray away the lunarians into the nothingness they want, but also the gems. The gems had not been suffering the endless angst the spirits on the moon had, and while I'm actually not sure what would happen to the admirabilis if the prayers were completed, they are biological creatures who have normal lifespans, so if they'd also be prayed away, this would be effectively genocide, as well as gemicide. The lunarians crave an end to the eternity it feels like they'd had to spend with all of the same human faults and flaws they'd had when they were alive, and even the impressive technology and culture they'd created no longer did anything to satisfy them. But the gems were still for the most part glad to be alive in this world, still believing there were new things to learn and experiences to have. Kongou also loved them, having shaped and taught them himself as a way to honour the humans he'd loved before. But that distinction doesn't really exist anymore, given everyone except for Phos and the admirabilis is now a lunarian. This would mean that rather than the lunarians, who we are told at least all crave oblivion, and the gems who all, or at least mostly, don't, we now have lunarians of both persuasions, though the ones who were originally lunarians are the vast majority. I think even after 10,000 years, gems who were already immortal might not have unanimously become tired of life. And so this will become the situation Phos will have to create a conclusion to in the end. Whether Ichikawa decides to ease us in with some scenes from during the 10,000 years, or go for an abrupt time skip to a time after that period, doesn't really change the circumstances that would need to be in some way handled, whether resolved or set on a path to repeat, for the series to end without leaving a lot of things open. And I think if she was intending to leave it with a lot of things open, it wouldn't come back off hiatus at all, because Chapter 95 could in many ways be considered a reasonable ending if that was the intention. Now, there are a lot of unknowns to consider, the outcomes of which could make different endings possible, and one of these is memories, both of the gems, Kongou and Phos. Phos lost a lot of memories throughout the story due to losing body parts and the inclusions with them, but by gaining the same divinity as Kongou, who's shown to have an exceptional memory, combined with an incredibly long period of introspection, could Phos possibly regain a sense of the memories that had been lost or suppressed around things like Cinnabar, Antarc and Ghost, causing Phos to long to return to the old days? And will remembering Kongou's experiences inform Phos of exactly what the consequences of praying will be, something that Enma conveniently never mentioned to Phos, but which Kongou obviously knew? Conversely, will the gems who've become Lunarians, so can no longer lose memories due to losing parts of their bodies, forget Phos anyway, and the lives they once had on Earth, just due to the huge amount of time they would now have spent living new lives on the moon? We saw with previous time skips that it only took a couple of 100 years for the Earth gems to stop thinking about Phos, and Yellow Diamond on the moon didn't take long at all in terms of gem lifespans to begin to become confused and forget being a gem. 10,000 years is longer than any of them, barring Kongou, have been alive, and so even something that seems as big of a deal as what happened over the past few chapters could very plausibly be forgotten. Enma, of course, will not forget Phos, because now Phos is the only way to complete his objective, but there is no reason for him to remind the former gems of this. The ideal for him would be for them to forget about Earth, live happily for a while, and by the time the 10,000 years was up, be in a similar state of being at peace with the idea of being prayed away. This could be one way that things could end, a happy ending for the Lunarians and gems, who would have had long enough lives to feel satisfied and ready to pass on, but a harsh one for Phos, who would have to pray away the people who no longer remembered the precious times and bonds that had re-emerged in Phos's own memory. If that was the case, Phos would be alone, unless the Admirabilis weren't affected by the prayers, but there's also the matter that back on Earth, more gems will be born over that 10,000 year period, many more in fact, given all the gems we see in the series and the ones that have been taken to the moon prior to the beginning were much younger than 10,000 years old at the start. So depending whether Phos decides to raise them or just shatter them as soon as they emerge on the beach, there could be a whole new population of gems to consider by the time Phos would be ready to pray. In the previously mentioned scenario, it could be that Phos wouldn't start to raise gems until everybody else had been prayed away, needing company as humans do. But loneliness may come before that point, or Phos may understand the reason why Kongou raised gems in the first place, feel the same way, and start looking for newly formed gems much sooner than that. There is a third option Phos could have regarding newly born gems though, which would be to ignore them, and I guess then the island would have some horrifying looking feral gem people roaming around, but that would seem more like the starting point for a whole other plotline, and I think we probably are close to the ending, so I'll leave that idea alone, even though it is kind of interesting to think about. Now, if Phos essentially becomes the new Kongou sensei in behaviour as well as abilities, therefore raises new gems to look like the gems there were before, perhaps knowing the methods used from Kongou's memories, and Phos knows that praying will wipe them out as well as the Lunarians, then this could lead to an ending a lot of people theorise will happen, where the cycle simply continues. Perhaps the Lunarians who used to be gems have come to desire oblivion too at this point, after 10,000 years of being around people who won't shut up about how great nothingness is, but Phos will have a good reason not to pray for anyone. This would be the opposite of the ending, where it's a good ending for the Lunarians and possibly the other gems, but a bad ending for Phos, because in this case, Phos and the new gems would achieve happiness, and the Lunarians would be in the same situation as always, only now with no plan to force someone to pray. After all, we don't know that Phos would be subject to the condition of having to obey a human, as Kongou was. It would seem logical that that wouldn't be the case. But even if it was, Enma would need to find a gem from the new batch to manipulate into humanity, and that probably wouldn't work a second time anyway. The cycle would continue, only now the Lunarians would be coming to Earth to either appease or force Phos instead of Kongou. But is there an ending where everybody could be happy and things could be sustainable for the future of this setting? Well, yes, I can see this happening, if and only if Phos has the ability to pray for individuals. If Phos can pray for people who ask for it, then while it would take some time to get through all of the existing Lunarians who want it, that shouldn't really matter. They've already had to wait another 10,000 years, and it's not like anyone's going to die of old age. In this situation, every being, including new gems, could live happily, knowing that when they felt ready to move on, they could choose to do so. Nobody would be forced into oblivion before they were ready, and Phos would never have to feel the weight of that kind of dilemma. In fact, gems born into future generations would have many choices, given the options to travel to the moon and even become Lunarians would be available to them, provided at least some current Lunarians wanted to stay behind to help pass on the knowledge and technology. It could result in lives that went through stages. First, a physical life as a gem on Earth, learning and experiencing natural things, and then a spiritual life on the moon, before returning to nothingness when the time is right. This is the ending I'd really like to see the most, and while I do like dark things in general, I think a peaceful, hopeful ending like this has been earned for this story, and wouldn't cheapen the darkness that came before it. I don't know much about Buddhism, but a peaceful ending that creates a path through life like that seems to fit with the tone and influences of the series. Yes, I want the old characters to spend some time together, and to see things like how Phos might be affected by a reunion with Antarc, especially if, as I suggested, Phos regains lost memories during the 10,000 year span. But most of all, I would like this series to leave us with a sense of hope that this setting could find a kind of redemption, that everyone born into it wouldn't be condemned to live forever or to die too soon, that everything Phos went through will lead to something good. Interestingly, though this may be a total crack theory, I feel like it could have been foreshadowed earlier that Phos would seem to have to make this kind of choice, as in praying away everyone and effectively killing people who didn't want to die, versus not praying and saving those people, but failing to save the people whose hopes were resting on the prayer, but would ultimately not have to make that choice, with a third option type solution becoming available. This potential foreshadowing is in the plotline where Phos is told that to resurrect the gems who've been powderized, including Antarcticite, Phos would have to make the call to kill all of the Admirabilis on the moon. Phos of course knew that the Admirabilis were not just animals of low intelligence, but rather were people, once they returned to their home in the ocean. And so where it may have been an easy choice for someone without Phos's experience, smash some snails to bring back your dead friends, for Phos, this was genocide of an innocent race that actually admired Phos. Genocide and betrayal. But it seemed that that plotline never came to anything, because a way was found to get those gems back without needing to kill the Admirabilis. It seemed like a horrible moral dilemma being piled onto Phos that ultimately didn't end up mattering. However, could the fact that this happened suggest that there's a third option with the prayer situation too, where everybody could get what they want? But what do you guys think? Do you think one of these endings will happen, or do you have a different idea for how Houseki no Kuni will end? Or do you think we've already seen the ending and the series will never return? Let me know in the comments, and also let me know if there are any other Houseki no Kuni topics you'd like me to cover in future videos. Thanks as always to my supporters on Patreon, and to all of you who help me out by subscribing to my channel. Remember, you can now also support me, as well as getting to read some great free webtoons, by clicking the link to my sponsor Bilibili Comics in the description or pinned comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon.